check your boots, put on your dancing boots. No time to waste. Oh, ready, set, and go. Yay, fire up the show. Oh, ready, set, and go. Let the good times roll.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another live edition of the Same Bet Show. And tonight we've got a very special guest, my good friend John Cokos from ProCraps. We're going to have him on here in just a few minutes to talk about his craps journey and all things craps, basically. But before we get to that, I'm going to talk about a few things. I want to introduce a new segment called Recognition. And the first recognition that I'm going to throw out there is actually for a friend of mine that most of you won't know. He plays with craps with me down in Oklahoma from time to time, and his dad was just inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame down in Oklahoma. So I just want to give a shout out to Jim Snively. I know you watch the show from time to time. Having your family in the Cowboy Hall of Fame, that's an accomplishment. So well done, Jim, and congratulations. And then the next recognition that I want to give out to goes to Ed Robinson. So I'm going to post this little picture over here. And it's not the biggest win that Ed's ever had. But last week, I think it was Friday of last week, he hit the 6 9 times in one hand. And by anybody's standards, that's an amazing roll worth recognition. And then the last recognition that I want to give out goes to Brian and the Hawaiian Crap Shooters team. Earlier this week, or it may have been last week actually, they actually hit 7,650 subscribers on his YouTube channel. And you guys know Brian, he hasn't been around that long, maybe a little bit over a year now, and he has just skyrocketed. So there you have it. That's my recognition for the week. Now, what I want to do is actually recruit you guys. I can't be everywhere. I can't see everything that's worthy of recognition. So what I'd like to do is see if I can get you to recommend people for some recognition. So you can reach me at samebet777@gmail.com. Drop me a note. Let me know who you think's worthy of recognition, and maybe they'll get recognized in our next week's show. So yeah, send me an email whenever you have whenever you have a chance. All right, so let's get to tonight's show. Now, the guy that I'm about to introduce to you has been on the scene for I think about 7 months or so when he put out his first video. And his very first one captured my attention. It was a money management system that was unique. It wasn't, stop losses or win losses and stuff like that, but it's actually how he arranged his chips in the rack that caught my attention, and ever since then, John and I have been good friends. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. How you doing? Thanks for having me on. It's a real honor to be here with you tonight.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out and joining us over here. I sure do appreciate it. So John, let's go back to those first days of YouTube. And actually, let's go back further than that. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get involved in this game? And who are you?
Well, I was born and raised in Jersey, so I'm kind of a Atlantic City child, I guess. My parents bought a bookstore in Cape May, New Jersey, which is a little south of Atlantic City, and we went there almost every weekend. I think from when I was 14 or 15 years old. We were always at the casino, and they'd bring us up to watch shows. My parents gambled quite a bit. They were blackjack players, and they'd bring me and my brother up there, and we go watch Count Basie, and I've seen you name it, I've seen them. And so I was introduced to like that life, like having a nice dinner and seeing a show and all of that. And when we got to be closer to 18, 19 years old, the casinos were a little less, lax back then. So I could watch them play. And I was able to kind of stand behind my father and watch him and my mom play blackjack. And they were like a team. He'd be at first base, she'd be at last base, and they would basically kind of fix the shoe, so to speak. He was always about the integrity of the shoe, my dad. And so he taught me a lot about money management, a lot about how to work the game, a lot about how casinos worked. And when I was getting to be around 21 where I could play myself, he bought me all the John Patrick VHS tapes. And if you're of a certain age, you probably remember John Patrick. So I consumed all of the John Patrick stuff and got myself ready to play roulette, craps, and baccarat. And my first trip to casino, I played all 3 games. Not very well, but I played them all. And I found that craps was clearly the most exciting game, although not the game I was best at. Baccarat was one that I actually won money at to go play craps with. I just like the idea on a craps table that, and I say this all the time, you don't just put money down and they tell you if you win or not. Craps, I always felt like I had a say in how much I won and the way that I won. And that's what brought me to the game. And I've been playing it ever since. I actually fell in love with it at 21, and here I am at 53, still playing. I love this game. I wouldn't call myself a pro, but I love it.
You said something that caught my attention. You played, I think you said baccarat in order to finance your craps game. Is that did I hear that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Baccarat is so easy, right? There's no strategy to baccarat. Baccarat is purely about betting the streak. And my dad taught me early on, bet the streak. And I learned how to kind of sniff out the trend in that game. And then I also figured out how to bet with progressions. And like when you stack, pull back half, stack again, pull it all down. And I learned these betting progressions in baccarat. And I could go with $100 back in the day, at a $5 table, win to where I'd have $250 and go to the craps table and take that $150 profit and play craps with it. And again, Atlantic City in those days, it was $3 tables and then eventually $5. And I had tons of time. My parents were lifers, so we would go to the casino in the afternoon and come back 2 days later sometimes. So I have to make that $100 I was bringing as a 21-year-old last 3 days. Oh, wow. So that's why I'm so careful with the way I play now.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to do with my show here is expand beyond craps. Craps is always going to be the foundation, but I'm interested in learning more about the other games. So I'm going to have to bring you back on to talk about baccarat one of these days, and we'll just dedicate a segment to baccarat only. So look forward to that, everybody. All right. So John, so you've been playing since 18, 19 years old. But your fascination with games, I'm going to dig into your podcast for a minute. Your fascination for games actually started when you were much younger than that, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. The family poker nights, of course. Now, I think, I don't know if it's an East Coast thing, but everybody I know growing up, everybody's family played poker. We had, my parents actually played penny rummy. We played pinochle for money. It was always a penny game, of course, but we played poker every weekend. And the story that I tell on the podcast was, at church, my dad and the uncles and my grandfather at the time, who's now since passed, would play these poker games in the basement of the church. And I could still smell the cigars and the cigarettes. And my dad actually, I shouldn't be saying this story, but when I was 13, my dad let me light his cigarettes. I would be able to sit there and watch the old guys play. And I was lighting his cigarettes for him. Maybe that's probably why I started smoking. But I still I love the smell of smoke. And that just brings me back to that basement of that church. But watching the old guys play, and it was like life or death. Like $1.50 in the pot to my one uncle was like, because he unfortunately passed away. He was a track guy. He was a Delaware track. And he, that dollar and change that he would win in the pot, that would take him all day at the track, and just watching just how hard those guys played was great. And learning how to read a face and learning how to, sniff it out a little bit was a lesson I learned pretty young. And on the East Coast, learning how to sniff out some BS was a pretty good skill to have, especially when you were young.
Yeah. All right. So let's come over to today. So where do you play? Where do you go to play?
Sure. Well, here I live in Washington State now. I live just north of Seattle. So the 2 casinos closest to me are about a 20 or 30 minute drive. They're both Indian reservation casinos. One's called Tulalip. One's called Angel of the Winds. There's a couple of casinos south of me. They're just a little too far of a drive, and you have to fight the Seattle traffic to get there. But my 2 locals are Indian casinos. One of them is great. The Angel of the Winds is, they're both Vegas style. They both have big hotels. They both have many restaurants. They're really sweet. Angel of the Winds is $5 tables. I go there a lot to practice new strategies, because if I'm thinking about something and I want to go play it, I can bring a few $100 up there. And if I burn it, it's not the biggest deal, but I get a lot of cracks at it. To Lalip, I go to play because their craps table, they actually just resurfaced it with plexiglass. So their surface is actually glass with felt on top. So it's super hard. If you like to try and control the dice, that's a great table to go to, because the balance is very true and somewhat air quotes controllable.
So wait a minute.
and they're great dealers. They're
So
they're
it's not a roll to
fantastic
win
dealers.
table. It's not.
Nope.
So
No, they
actually
have legit tables.
plexiglass and then a microfiber layout
Yeah.
on top of the plexiglass.
Right on top. Right on top. I was throwing there the story that I told this on my Coffee and Crap show a few months back, and we went there for my anniversary. It's kind of a long story, but during the night I was talking to the dealers. And I'm like, this table's interesting because it made a sound that I hadn't heard before. It sounded like a hardwood table, but like, what is the surface? And they said, oh, we just redid it like a few days ago, and we put plexiglass down with the microfiber on top. And they said primarily because it's going to last forever. The last tables that they had, Seattle, our area is very moist, and the wood gets soft and gets kind of jacked up. And they've replaced their surfaces like 3 times, and they got tired of it. So they put glass on that thing, and it's going to be there forever now. Which to me, as a shooter, it's predictable now. I know exactly what I'm coming into.
Well, until they start putting something in between the plexiglass and the layout.
Well, they'll start layering.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Then it'll change the behavior of those dice. That's for sure.
Yep.
All right, John. So we know where you play. Do you travel? Do you ever make it out to Vegas or to the East Coast, back over to East Coast to play?
I haven't been to East Coast in a while. Most of my family's now down in Florida, so I go to Florida a couple times a year to visit them. I've got some friends down in Phoenix. Phoenix now just got craps as well as Florida, so we haven't played craps in Phoenix yet. But my wife and I go to Vegas probably 2 or 3 times a year just to go. I've been to Reno to see Jeremy actually color up. I visited him and played with Ted and the Hawaiians down there. I try and get to Vegas or Reno 4 or 5 times a year if I can. I'm close enough that I can just go and do that. We're actually house hunting. My daughter is going to graduate high school next year. She's a junior now. And so we're house hunting. We're looking at somewhere, either Reno or Vegas area, maybe Summerlin, or we looked at Mesquite, Nevada, and we're looking at Phoenix. So we're going to be somewhere closer to sunlight and some more variety in terms of the casino action.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Relocating out to the Nevada area has a few advantages, actually. So keep us posted on where you end
and I
up.
work out of the house. I'm a teacher. Well, I'm finished my teaching job, but I work from home, and my wife does as well. So we can literally show up with a laptop and be at work.
Yeah.
So where we live doesn't matter. And we keep talking about what kind of lifestyle do we want? And to me, it's all about, I'd like to retire as a dealer at some point, but my days, I'd love to just wake up, go outside, have a cup of coffee, jump in the pool, take a few phone calls, do my work, and relax, maybe go to a show, see some sports, some live sports. That's the kind of thing I look at, like quality of life. And I think Vegas, besides having craps tables every 10 feet, it's all about quality of life for me. And I want to retire in a kind of relaxing, sunlit pool.
Yeah.
In the backyard kind of way. So
sounds like the dream, man. Sounds
totally
like a good dream. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your YouTube channel. So I said 7 months earlier in the intro. I think it's been around 7 months, but I can't remember exactly for sure.
Yeah. I think the first video was in June.
June. Okay.
I think so.
What prompted you to actually put this out there for the world to see? and why ProCraps?
Ooh, you know what? That's a great question. First of all, I started it because of COVID. I've played craps forever. I practice strategies. I've always thought myself a pretty good strategist and a good bettor. I'll say I'm one of the best bettors out there at the table. And I've been using win craps or phone apps or whatever have you to practice. I've never thought about having a real table. When we went to Vegas for my wife's 50th birthday last November, we were there and the tables were jacked up, as you know. It was COVID. They had plexiglass everywhere and the tables were all $25. And I'm like, man, I didn't have the bankroll for that because we had just brought the whole family out there. We were eating at Hell's Kitchen with 11 people, and I'm like, I can't play. My son said, go to YouTube and look up $25 table strategies. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he got me onto Jeremy's channel and I went, oh my God, this is incredible. So then I started binging YouTube craps videos. And I quickly realized that there was some super top notch, like high quality production, great information, and some that were just, not. And I'm kind of a perfectionist. And I thought, there's a niche here. There's a void in what's being taught. And I think I can fill that void. And when we got back, the first thing I did was build a table. I built a table, which I have a video on how I did that. for the sole purpose of practicing strategies with actual chips and actual dice. And then I started getting into the dice control and trying to figure that out. And my son said, just do it. Just start a channel. What the hell you got to lose? And I'm like, all right, fine. And then it was like, what do you know? Like, what's the one thing I could teach that nobody else is doing? And so that's what I did. I come up with the Lammers video, the video where I separate my money, and a separate video on how I manage my bank account. And I thought that was the one thing that nobody's talking about, is how to like survive the casino, because everybody is trying to teach you how to destroy the casino, which isn't really possible. And mine was more about survival tactics. And that's what I went out for it. As far as the name ProCraps, I always tell the story of when I used to have a software company way back, and I started the company on a whim, and my wife was literally pregnant with my son. She was 2 months pregnant. I had just come back from a job where I literally learned how to write computer code like 6 months ago. And I said, you know what, Kat, I'm going to quit that job. I'm going to get rid of the insurance, and we're just going to go start a company. And she's like, all right. I mean, what, so a lot of sideways glances there for sure, but we did it. And I always say, if you put yourself in a position to fail, all you can do is succeed from that point. And so I did the software company with that in mind. I call myself ProCraps because if you're going to call yourself ProCraps, you better damn well be good. You better give good information, and you better teach things at a high level. And to me, it adds pressure to what I do every single day. And so I think by making it hard on myself, it makes me better. And hopefully that translates out when the shows come out.
Well, like I said earlier, you hooked me in from the very first video, and I was very impressed with it. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here, but I want to give a shout out real quick. I know Brian from Hawaiian Crap Shooters, Mr. Money Shot, is out there right now. Brian, I gave you some kudos here at the very beginning of this show for reaching over 7,500 YouTube followers. So well done, Brian. Well done. It's
amazing.
So yeah, thank you, Brian, for all of your content. All right, John, let's come back and talk a little bit again about your YouTube channel. The best I can tell, you have about 4 or 5 different avenues within the channel.
That's right.
You've got your early stuff, the money management and a few maybe strategies. You've got your coffee and craps. You've got cocktails and craps, and craps in a minute. So I'm hoping that you can maybe tell us a little bit about what's the difference between these 3 or 4 different channels or avenues.
Sure. Well, they've come in different directions, I think. So when I first got started, Coffee and Craps was going to be this idea where I would film myself practicing every day and doing the typical build a bankroll. You see a lot of channels doing, hey, $0 to $5,000. And I started doing that the first 3 shows, and it was, to me, boring. I thought people weren't going to like this any more than I liked rolling it out that way. But I do practice every day. And I thought, let me just flick the camera on in the mornings and show you what I practice and how I practice. And it's morphed into me challenging myself to do things. For a while there, I was doing this thing called the 3-unit challenge. Like, can I take 15 chips and make 3 units out of that? And it's kind of grown over time. Now it's morphed into about a 45-minute, almost like a radio program. I get up and it's like the morning drive with John, talking about whatever I feel like, and then a little bit of rolling, but it's not about the rolling. It's about theory and it's like my inner John Patrick kind of coming out in the mornings. And I figure if you want to learn a little bit, see how I manage a table, see how I spot trends and do my thing, that's a great show, because I do talk about things like spotting trends. I talk about playing with house money and recognizing what house money is and what it isn't and how we do that. So that's that show. It's kind of grown into this morning show, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, that's one of the unique things about your channel is that you don't just throw the dice, or you're not like me and I just talk. You have the best of both worlds. And I think that kind of lends some credibility to your ProCraps. You practice what you preach. You talk about it. When things don't go the way, you'll talk about that. And you have great participation from the audience. So I'm a fan of those shows for sure.
It's better when it doesn't go my way, actually. I like it.
It's a lot more entertaining.
When the rolls fail, it's good, because I think there's this misconception that because I use ProCraps or Hawaii does whatever Brian does, that everything works all the time and these are great strategies. Every strategy can get your butt kicked. And it's good to show that happens to me sometimes, But yeah, so that's the morning show. The cocktails and craps, I've always envisioned that as being me with somebody else, never being just me. but I want it to be like you watching the wheels turn. And let me try and work a strategy. And I always wanted to get like Brian on, or get Skill and Luck on, or you on, or somebody on with me to kind of talk through it and just kind of zoom in on a table, have a few cocktails, and just kind of talk through craps with no pressure.
Yeah.
And that show's been harder to get off the ground because of time.
Yep.
Being on the West
I
Coast,
totally,
there's no good
I
time
understand
to do
that.
it.
But yeah, I'll put it out there, John. Just let me know whenever you want to do it, and we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen.
You got it. Yep.
All
And then what else we have? We have Craps in a Minute, I guess. Craps in a Minute with shorts. I was experimenting. Yeah, I experimented with that a little bit. When you watch the how to be a big deal on YouTube videos on YouTube, they tell you to make shorts, the 60-second vertical size videos. And I thought, let me just try that and see if it works at all. And I did like 7 or 8 of them. And they're good. They're snappy. They're very punchy. They were easy to film. They didn't do a lot for the channel. And I don't know that people got anything out of them, because those shorts turn into like TikTok sort of things. And I don't think that people in this community care about that as much. So I've stopped doing those just because there wasn't a whole lot of interest in it.
Well, John, I don't know. Do you have a Facebook group or a Facebook page?
Yeah, I started it like a week ago. I figure I don't do Facebook. I'm kind of, hate to say it, but I'm very anti-Facebook.
Nothing wrong
a few
with
years
that.
back, they allowed somebody to live stream some pretty violent stuff, and they didn't do anything about it. So I kind of backed off of Facebook completely for years.
Okay.
And just a few months ago, I hooked up with Brian from Hawaiian Crap Shooters on Facebook, and I've been more active out there since, but it makes me feel a little dirty, frankly.
Well, where I was going with that is your little shorts might do well on Facebook. It's going to reach a whole different audience. But I'm not going to fault anybody for having any objections to Facebook. That's for sure. So.
Well, the shorts could do a thing like, on the podcast, I talked a lot about let's find ways to grow the game. Like, let's make this game inviting and fun, and let's get more women and young people to play craps. Would be great, but you got to make it not so stinky old manish. You know what I mean? Yeah. And maybe you're right. Maybe the shorts going to Facebook can open it up to a different audience that we haven't thought about yet.
Yep.
It's a good call.
So let's go back and talk a little bit about that money management system. I don't know if, I don't have any video. I wasn't able to pull it up or anything, but can you kind of talk us through how you organize your chips?
So at the core of the system is this. For most systems I play, I allot a certain dollar amount per shooter. Whatever, if it's the Hawaiian Crap Shooters easy, if it's a 110 inside, with whatever I'm doing, it's this much money per shooter, and that's it. So what I do in my rack, when I first buy in, I separate my chips in a certain part of the rail closest to me and to the right, and I separate them in chunks that look like one shooter. And I used to do it with white chips. I would take a white chip and separate my per shooter money with white chips. And then I got old, and I looked down at my rack, and in the heat of the moment, the white chips sometimes look the same as the little ridges on the other chips, and I can't tell them apart. So I went and bought the little like clear lammers that the dealers use to separate chips in their rack. And when you drop those in between the chips, it makes a little space, it shows up as black when you look down. It's like a shadow you can see. So it's very easy to see delineations of how much money you've got. And because they're smaller than chips, you can fit your fingers in there and separate them really easy. So I started doing that with my per shooter money. And then in the front of the rack, as I earn profit, I separate them with more of those spacers, and I separate them in units that would color up. So 4 greens spacer, 4 greens in a spacer, 5 reds in a spacer, and so forth. So I can look down at my rack and just count the little shadows and know instantly if I have enough money to play another shooter, how many shooters I have left and how much profit I've got. So to me, it takes one more bit of thinking out of the game. I can just look down, know right where I am, and bet accordingly, and bet so I know what I've got. I think a dangerous thing to do is to keep throwing money out there because your rack looks pretty full, but it may not actually be very full. This way, I always know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I saw when I first looked at that video. This is brilliant. My chip rack is usually a mess while I'm shooting. I don't ever take time to organize it until the next shooter, and I often won't bet on the next shooter at all. I take my time to rearrange my chips. And I love this lammer concept of, I know how much I'm going to bet on the next shooter. I can see how much
Mm-hmm.
I'm up, or quickly understand if I'm down. Just a very great way to keep your rack organized. So if you guys haven't seen this particular video, I have put a link to John's YouTube channel in the description here. I would recommend going out there, finding the money management videos, and give them a watch and see if you're if you're interested in working in that kind of style as well.
It really helps. It's funny to look at. People look at you kind of funny when you show up and do that. But with every $12 comes off the table, I reset the rack, and people go, "What are you doing?" And we start talking. And for me, it's a conversation starter. You know what I mean? I like to yap a little bit. So it's a conversation starter, and it gets me kind of grooving at the table a little bit, and just a reason to have another good time. Like so tell somebody else more about the game. I think it helps.
So real quick, guys, I forgot to mention at the beginning of this that I'm trying to read your comments as we go through here, and I'm actually tagging some of them. Here in a few minutes, we're going to do a Q&A session with John. So if you have any specific questions, go ahead and send them in the chat, and I'll try to capture them, and we'll come back to it here in a few minutes. All right, so we've talked a little bit about money management. Before we go on to another thing, you recently released your very first podcast. Tell us a little bit about what you want to do with the podcast. Who's your audience? What are you trying to tell us?
Yeah, the podcast is a different thing. So what inspired me to do the podcast was actually Greg at 555 Craps, really good friend of mine. And Greg had put a couple of videos out where Greg is a great storyteller. If you haven't watched Greg's channel, watch Greg's channel. His storytelling is fantastic. He's like me. He's been playing forever, and he just has seen a lot of things. And I thought, man, that guy tells a great story, but he's at the craps table and you can't see him. And I'm like, there's a venue for this, because I've got stories too. And I've got things I want to say that don't make sense to look at my table while I'm saying them. And so that was the thought of having this fireside chat kind of a thing. And let me just tell you some stories from the casino, or let me give you my opinion on crapless craps like I did the first video. And the next video is my next podcast will have a opinion piece on roll to win craps. And it's like, those things, you don't need to see my face. You don't need to see my table. But I think if you're driving in the car or you're walking your dog, I do that too. I walk the dog with podcasts on all the time. And it's an hour walk from me and the dog. So I'll get, a full episode of something in. So I'm like, can I fill an hour with interesting stuff that you don't care about the table with? And that was how it got started. So I thought, yeah, let me just do some opinion pieces. And I can even do some life in there. Like at the end of it, the World According to John segment, which is like not always about craps. Last time it was about diversity. And this time it may be, about, I have a plan actually. I won't tell you what it is, but there's chance there to kind of get to know me as a person, and hopefully to impart some of this 53 years of wisdom maybe that I've gathered out there. And just close your eyes, walk your dog, drive to work, and have it not just be about where did my chips go. And that was it was all Greg. Greg's inspired me, and I just kind of ran with it like I do. So,
well, I would say well done, Greg, because the very first episode, the pilot episode, I really enjoyed it. I'm a fan of the podcasts. Now, I'll often listen to them at 1.5 speed and things like that. So you sound pretty slow and drawn out to me right now, because I just finished your podcast at a faster speed.
Well, it's funny because my whole family said I talk too fast. They're all, from the East Coast, like, God, would you slow down a little bit? And I make it a point to speak slowly and clearly where I can. It's the teacher in me, making sure that I make my points and that kind of thing.
Well, that's, you and I were talking just a few minutes ago before we went on the air that your podcast was pretty special because the pacing was great. The storytelling was relatable. You talk about your family and growing up and playing rummy and all that kind of stuff. Well, the same thing happened to me. So I think I told you, you had asked me to critique it, and I had to listen to it a second time because I was caught up in the stories that you were telling. I forgot that I was trying to say, hey, you should do this or you should do that. I was listening to what you had to say. So definitely, John, your podcast, I definitely recommend people give it a try.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely a storytelling, and I want to try and bring you to the place, right? I want, like, when I tell stories about like the douchebag don't betters that are just jerky, and I want to bring you to a table, and I want you to picture yourself at the table with those people, right? That are giving other players grief for doing well. Like that's you've all been there, right? And I want to bring you, like, if I can weave that story without you seeing me or seeing my table and put you in that moment where you can smell the cigarette smoke from your grandfather, that's the idea of it.
Yeah, John, I'm going to go
hard to
ahead.
do.
I know I told you I wasn't going to pull these comments in, but I am going to pull one in here real quick.
Okay.
Let's see here. Zafir Shama. The podcast was nice because it felt like John and I were in a vehicle and on a road trip and simply BSing and telling stories and such. Very organic, nothing forced, and it was a great first podcast. So, Zafir, I echo your comments. That it was you nailed it. That's exactly how I felt.
Thank you.
As I listened to it.
Thank you so much. And I got to tell you, and Dave, you probably do the same thing. I'm sure that the other YouTubers here in the list are doing the same thing. I watch a lot of videos on YouTube about how to be a better YouTuber. And I watched a couple of videos about how to do a good podcast. And the number one thing I heard from two people, actually, they both said the same thing, was in a podcast, unlike YouTube, they're watching you. It's like a TV show. On a podcast, you're right inside their ears.
Yep.
Right. And you're so connected on like a visceral level to your listener. Like it's like you're talking right to them. And you've got to picture their face and just kind of walking next to them as you're saying your podcast. And that's what makes that work. So Zaf called that out. And I really appreciate the comment because that's exactly what I was going for. I wanted to be like right here with you in that. It's hard. It's tough to do that when you're alone in a room talking to a computer screen. It's very hard to get that feel. So I appreciate that came through.
Yep. All right. So John, let's move on and talk a little bit about betting strategies. Now, I've watched several of your videos and you tend to go to the dark side more than the light side. So is that a fair assumption that you're more of a dark side player?
Relatively fair. I'm more of a hybrid player. I use the dark side. When I go to a table, my instinct is the table's not doing well. I always feel like most craps tables are full, and to get onto a table, somebody has to have lost. So when the spot opens up, I figure the table just went cold or got cold, and I'll always go out with a don't to get started. I'll usually play something like the Headless Horseman strategy, where it's a don't pass and a couple of come bets that come out following it, to sort of feel the table out. And I get a little bit of a safety net as I kind of meander through the table, but I lean dark. I'll go don't pass with odds while I'm feeling it out. Once the table kind of declares itself or a shooter declares themselves, I play in ways that I can easily switch and move right to the light side, pull the don'ts back, scale them back or pull them, and then go all in. But I would declare myself more of a hybrid bettor and more of a trend follower any more than one side or the other. I think some folks are like predilected to go one way. I tend to feel it a little bit.
Well, that's very true. Our friend Greg, he's a strong dark side person. But I tend to be more like you. I will mix things up. I tend to go, with a don't come or a don't pass or a don't come on random shooters. Maybe a 6 and 8 in there with it. But when it comes around to my side, when I'm shooting, no, I go for it as much as
I make the same mistake. I actually flip when it's me shooting, and like Greg and I always joke about, the downside to being a dice controller or somebody who thinks they can control the dice is that when it's your turn to shoot, you go all in on yourself and you overbet your skill. I tend to want to do that. I tend to think I can shoot pretty good and go a little bit heavy on my own shot. So to my detriment, sometimes that happens for sure. But I think the dark side, the problem with the dark side, I love it because it's going to win, right? One thing you can be assured of is 100% of the shooters will 7 out. No, everybody will 7 out. Otherwise, we'd all still be at the table right now. So you know that. The thing is, the dark side has one win condition, right? The dark side has
so much
one
winning
win.
on the dark side with come out 7s and 11s. And
oh yeah,
shooters hitting their
come out
points.
7 will get you.
Yeah. So
it'll
you
get
might
you.
have a mathematical advantage a little bit, but man, those micro trends on the table will kill you if you're not.
No question. It's timing.
Yeah.
It's all time. It's when the 7 comes that gets you. The 7s are coming. It's a matter of in what order they come with everything else, where the dark side may or may not get you. But the thing about the dark side is, like I said, there's one win condition: the 7 during a point. That's the only way you ever win. And the amount you can win is limited to what you have on the table. Whereas a light side player sees the pot of gold, and it's like, well, I have these bets out there, and the more they hit, the more I can win, and you can keep building up. And you chase that dream. The dark side is like, hey, I got $100 out there that's it. I'm winning $100. I mean, when the 7 comes, I know what's going to happen. There's no pressing it. There's no regressing it. it's going to win. So I can see why people would, kind of look at that as a boring way to play. And I think to some degree, if the trend's not going that way, if the streak is wrong for you, that can really bite you because you only have one way to win.
Yeah, I have the advantage here, John. I'm seeing people post the comments, and every once in a while, I'm going to go ahead and pull one in. It looks like you were on the table with Brian. John sniped my late horse several times. I left the table as a headless horseman.
Brian, in that session, we were at the Grand Sierra in Reno, and we're playing, and Brian says to me, "Do you mind if I qualify you?" Because Brian qualifies everybody as a random shooter. Like I would qualify me. You don't know me from Adam. I met him 2 days ago, and he puts whatever it was $100 or $140 on the no 4. He lays the 4 for 140 and 4. He did it again. I sniped him a second time. Now he did win the repeater, so he's not telling the whole story. He got the repeater on me on that, but I did crush him on those late bets a couple of times.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a pretty funny story.
All right, so
that's the kind of stuff. That's where craps is better than baccarat, right? In baccarat, the best story you can tell at baccarat is everybody won on the banker one time, and everybody cheered for no reason at all. In craps, that's a 5 minutes in 25 years of playing that I'll never forget.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna cause a little disturbance here and ask you to talk about, I think it might have been your last video where you talked about dice influence, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that and see if what do you really think? Is it possible, or what do you think?
So I look at it like religion. I always give this analogy. So with religion, there's atheism and there's religiosity. Right, you're either here or there. Most people aren't necessarily in the middle. Dice control kind of falls into that world where you're either a believer or you're not. And the way that I view this is from a standpoint of I have a childlike faith that it's possible. Right, I've sat here in my practice area and I have set the dice and thrown, and I have seen clusters of numbers come out that are supposed to come out, and I have no idea why. I know I'm not doing it great. I've watched in slow motion the chaos that it is, and you saw my last video on that. It's complete. It's a train wreck when the dice hit the table. I don't know how it works yet. Somehow, numbers kind of come up in clusters, and so I have a belief that it's possible. I don't believe that I can ever snipe numbers. I believe that through controlling action, through controlling velocity and how much rollback off the back wall, I may be able to hide the 7 a little bit. And if I'm consistent in how I throw, you may see some clusters of numbers, but I don't really believe yet that it's possible to really control anything. Yeah. I think it's controlled chaos.
Well, I don't want to speak for all dice influencers or dice controllers, but the general thought is that no, we don't target necessarily specific numbers. The whole idea is to avoid the 7 for a few more rolls than the average. So your 7-out ratio, if it's above an 8, you're exhibiting some level of influence. And if you can do that over 1,000 rolls, okay, then you probably do have some influence. But I think the misconception is that a lot of people think that a dice influencer or a dice controller is going to have monster rolls every time they get the dice, and that's just not.
It's not the case, and I think what has to be realized is the real numbers. So I've done tons of analysis on this, and they say that the average roll. This is coming from the Wizard of Odds, Michael Shackelford. The average number of rolls for a shooter is 8.5. Right now, that takes into account the come out rolls. So he may have a come out 7. Come out craps number, the point being set, and then 5 rolls. That's 8. What I've seen is that once, and really what I care about is what happens after the point is set. I don't care about come out winners or losers, but when the point gets set, what we really see is an average of 3.5 to 4 rolls after the point's been set. Most of it is 2.5. The likelihood of any number getting hit a couple of times is like 10%. It almost never happens to see a repeater. So on a dice control standpoint, if you can hold the 7 back 1 or 2, you go from having 2.5 shots after the point to 5 shots after the point. It's not even that much of an advantage. It's an advantage, but it's not like this, sell your house and put the money on the 6 kind of an advantage, right? It's a small one that you've got to bet smartly. A dice controller is more likely probably to get that 20 roll, but they're going to have 3, 4, 5 rolls in between, and they get into the groove, and then the good one comes. I think that's what I've kind of discovered with watching folks who do it. There's going to be the shorties. They're more likely to have a long one if they're getting the groove. But I wouldn't go, like I said, I'm not selling my car to go put the money on it yet.
Well, I agree with you. And, most of the people watching this video know that I've taken several classes from Golden Touch Craps, Howard Newman, and so on and so forth. And even the Dominator, one of the first things he tells the students is, if you're at a table with me and you don't qualify me to make sure that I'm shooting, that I'm on point for that day, I'll never, ever play with you at that table again. Even, probably the best known dice influencer out there, he tells his students, be careful. Don't always overbet.
Yeah. I mean, the table is what it is. The diamonds are what they are. The dice are what they are. You're really trying to fight physics the whole way through that thing. And if you can find a groove and you can get your rhythm going, and it may work out for you, great, but you got to bet with caution. And that's why I always advocate, and Brian will agree with me here, getting yourself to a foundation, like getting quickly to where your bets are paid for in 2 or 3 rolls, because that's about the average you're going to see. If you can get to being even on the shooter in 2 or 3 rolls, go crazy.
Yep. All right, John. So I have one more question that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, but let's go ahead and take some of these, or take a look at these comments. Not too many people actually put any questions down there, but let's see what we've got here. Mid-Atlantic Craps. Here on the East Coast, I take an early lunch just to be able to watch John's Coffee and Craps. Yeah,
that's awesome. It's the hardest thing about this show, and the Cocktails and Craps show, is timing. I do it at 8 o'clock in the morning, my time, so I get it done before I start work at 9. But I know that's 11 o'clock on the East Coast, and for you all in the Midwest, it's impossible. It's a great in core working hours, and you can't attend.
Yeah, there's
no good time to do a live stream.
No matter where you're at. Yeah. So next one, Skill and Luck. Let the good times roll. So that's a reference to the new theme song for the show. Let the good times roll. I love that. I have a lot of fun putting that together.
It's really cool.
All right, next one. Okay, here's kind of a question. How come no one dappers up when playing at the casino anymore? Not many suits and ties out there. Yeah, you know why?
Interesting.
Because it's restricting.
When I was a kid, we did that. When I was a kid and we went to go see all the shows that we saw, we had to. We saw it Sammy Davis Jr. My mom, I was in a full suit and tie, 16 years old. And my parents made us do that. When I was a kid, that's just the way that you did it. We went to the casino with them my dad was a gambler, right? So we always got, comp dinners and comp rooms, and you better show your appreciation was his message. So we dressed to the nines all the time. Yeah. And I always shot when I was first starting to play. I always shot in a shirt and tie.
But he's right. You don't see that a whole lot anymore. You just don't.
On fight nights, you do.
I've never been in a casino on a fight night. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's the people watching on fight night is fantastic.
I'll bet.
You go to MGM on a fight. Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, let's keep going here. We got. I pulled this one out just to let you know Fives is out there. Greg's watching the show. So, next up, we've got Lulu saying the table can be ice cold until I go dark. So he's the one responsible for switching the mojo of the table.
Yeah, that seems to happen. Chasing a trend is hard.
Yeah, it is. That's a great point. When is it a trend? And when does the trend end? Is it after 2 or 3 rolls? Is it after 5 rolls? Well,
to me, 2 things in a row is a trend, right? If I see the same thing happen twice, it's the start of a trend, and I'm on it. Yeah. That's how I learned how to play Baccarat, right? Banker, not a trend yet. Banker a second time. Now we're in it. Now I'm all in on the banker. And I roll that. I follow the shoe 1 shot after the repeat, and you assume the trend is starting. So you miss 1, but if you're going to get 4 in a row, you're good. And that's how you can make money in the field by doing that. You can make money on the don't by saying 2 don't passes. Cool, now I'm in.
Yeah.
And if it goes south, it goes south. But you can't. Trends are always behind you.
Yeah.
And Greg says that very clearly.
A good reminder that this is gambling. The trends will end, and they might not end when you want them to.
That's exactly right.
All right, so Dice Grinders, Arnell's out there watching. He says, awesome. I wonder how thick the plexiglass is they use. Any idea?
Ooh, I should have asked them that. I can tell you this is a weird story, but I actually built a hockey rink once. This is going way back. But after I sold my software company, I opened up a hockey rink. And the plexiglass that we had there was 1/2 inch thick. And this stuff sounded like that. It was definitely 1/2 inch is about as best you can get before it starts bending.
Okay.
So 1/4 inch thick, it'll actually have some give to it. 1/2 inch thick, it'll actually hold pretty sturdy. It's probably even a little thicker than that because of the people leaning on it and the weight of the wood. So that's my guess.
Yeah. All right. Next up, this one's for me. Bernard Devlin. We saw each other at the Kansas Star a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, thanks for watching. It was fun to see somebody in the casino that actually recognized me. So thanks for stopping by to say hello. I appreciate that. So John, let me actually ask you that. Have you been recognized in the casino yet?
Not yet. Only by Brian. The first time I went to Reno and met Brian and those guys, they of course recognized because we were out there meeting on purpose, but not yet. I have not had that experience yet. When I went to Vegas and I walked into Casino Quest, I got recognized.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of weird. Yeah.
Well, Brian's not the only person that you met in Reno. Here we've got Toothpick Ted saying he had a blast playing with you in Reno.
We had so much fun. That was honestly one of the best times I've had in my life at a craps table. I tell this a lot recently because when you go to play craps, most of the time you're by yourself, right? We go to the casino as a family. Me, maybe my son plays with me, but most of the time it's just me. And you're at a table with a bunch of strangers. When I went to Reno, I met, Brian and his wife and Corey and Mar and Chef Dice and Ted and Color Up. And it was like this whole group of people, and we were instant old friends. And at a table with a bunch of friends, the vibe was unbelievably different.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. I could have lost 1,000 or won 1,000. I wouldn't have cared because it was so much fun to play with people that you know and that you're on the same page with. It was just a whole different experience.
John, if we're ever at a table and I lose $1,000, I'll care.
Well, speaking figuratively, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right, let's keep going here. So, again, Brian, John reminds me of an accountant when I played with him live at Reno. Always counting, but still can chatter with all of us.
Mm-hmm. I practice that rail stuff. I literally, when I pay myself here at home, I practice manipulating the rail with my fingers and not looking at it, so I can get the chips and the lammers where I want them as I'm doing it. I actually practice that so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I can see where that would come in beneficial. If you're trying to do that for the very first time while you're in the casino, you're probably going to fail.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it requires some practice. Real quick, Marnster out there. Mar is watching tonight. Aloha.
Aloha.
And Dice Grinders again. When we were talking about the light side bettors versus the dark side bettors, he considers himself in between the two extremes. Yeah, and I can attest to that. I've seen Arnell play a few times on live fantasy craps games, and he'll switch around depending on what he needs to do. So
that's smart.
And then I give a shout out to my friend Bird Dog out there watching. What's up, guys? Good to see you back. Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate it.
The chopper.
The chopper. Yeah. Mid-Atlantic Crap saying, I talk about John's chip management video all the time. Yeah. Any idea, John, how many views that video's had?
Like 1,000 or 1,200. Not a lot. Yeah. Not like you'd think it would be. But that's the one that made me kind of famous, I guess, is that video.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, 1,200. That's actually pretty good. Especially
it's pretty good.
7 months on the scene. That's not bad at all.
Yep. What I should do is call the video the #1 super best way to make money at the craps table and get 500,000 views on it.
Yeah.
For some garbage, right?
It's all in the title, right?
Exactly.
All right. So Skill and Luck out there was saying CG is calling your name, and that was when you were talking about retirement jobs in Vegas. So maybe you can go.
I would work there in a minute. Yeah. I would work for them in a second. Yeah, totally. If I could afford to just work, that'd be so much. That'd be great.
Yeah, I got to hang out with them when I was in Vegas last time for several hours. And the energy that those guys have is amazing, and I can tell you they're just like what you see on video is what they're like off camera as well. So just a fun group of people to be around. All right,
No
I'm
question.
going to take a quick look over at the comments again, see if anything new came in. Shadow 22. Why is the 12 a push on the don't pass?
That's how the casino pays for the lights. That's part of house edge, right? It's like every bet, there's a 36-1, odds of rolling a 12, they pay you 30. That's house edge. The same there. If the pass line wins on 7-11 and the don't pass wins on everything else, there would be even money. So they got to build a win in someplace, a guarantee, and that's the guarantee.
Yeah. Let's see here. We got a comment that I think is going to be a teaser for your next podcast. How do you feel about the electronic craps? So without giving away what you're going to talk about in your podcast, can you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are?
Sure. My mind has changed on it. I initially hated it. And I hated it without ever playing it. So I guess I'm the worst person on the planet, right? You make a decision on something before you experience it. What I hate about it is it's a job stealer. It's the whole point of that thing is to have one dealer who could be a dishwasher, by the way. It takes no skill to deal that game. And so you're basically, crushing 4 jobs with that table. So I don't like it for that reason. I don't like that that's going to be the $5 table option for everybody, because new players can only play that and they're not going to get a feel for the game at the electronic table. So I don't like it for those reasons. However, when I played on the electronic craps table, it's so small and I was at where stick left 1 would be. When I threw the dice with my spinner, my hand was probably 3.5 feet from the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I could roll almost what I wanted. I had 20 plus rolls 3 times in a row. And the only time I 7'd out was when I slipped on the dice and they hit the little the glue stick thing.
Yeah, so the little bumper they put in there to.
Yeah, I crushed that table. It was so easy to roll. And so as a player, I'm like, if I need to go make, some money, like my old Baccarat days, I would go play roll to win to go earn a bunch of money and then go to the real table. Like that's a simple way to make cash. But I don't like the fact that it takes jobs. I don't like the fact that that's what it's turning into, because frankly, I grew up in the service field as a young person, and dealers making tips, that's what it's all about. I think that it's a service business, and I think if we remove the service from it, you're going to see nothing but stadium craps in this thing, and it bums me out. It really does.
I agree. Pull in another question if I can real quick. Vince is saying, how many Craps Nation guys are cashing in the roll to win tables? Are they extreme low rollers, dice sliders? Well, the few craps or roll to win tables that I've played on, you can't slide. They have bumpers in there, and more than one. It just won't work. But the horizontal spin works though. The horizontal spin over the bumper, you can land them flat, and they'll literally just die off that. Off the back wall, whatever they land on, they're not rolling over again. So you can totally control that spin. They're kind of fun to throw on. I was going to tell you, I've only been called out twice from the crew, the pit crew, and one was just a couple of weeks ago on a roll to win table. I was at stick left 1, and if you know these tables, stick left 1 and stick right 1 are about this far apart. I mean, there's nothing but a little pad in between you. Well, here I am over at stick left 1, and I go to do my swing, and the stick person over there tells me I can't extend my arm over halfway. On the roll to win tables, you can't. I mean, unless you're a little T-Rex throwing it like that or something. I don't know how they expected me to throw the dice, but that came right after I had a 46 roll, I think is what it was, earlier that week. So that was one of the times that I've actually been given a little heat at one of those roll to win tables.
At every table I've been on that's roll to win, the dealers have been half asleep. It's like they don't want to be there at all. They're just literally like, okay, here's the dice, type in the numbers, and they could care less.
Yeah.
Like they're just pissed they even have to be there.
Yeah.
And so fine, I'll make the money while you're being unhappy. The problem is you don't tip them, because they don't really, if they would at least do stick calls, like have some fun with us, but they're literally like it's like they don't want to be there even a little bit, and it just sucks all the life out of those tables.
Oh, I'm fortunate. I'm able to tip at my tables, and I do. I'll still tip them just like I was at the regular table, and I'll tip early. Just just to get them, I don't know, involved. But like you said, a lot of times they're zombies. But you start tipping, and it can help change the attitude of the table a little bit. Not as much as
Those tables have that weird down attitude in general, don't they? I mean, to me, it feels like everybody is at that table because they just lost their ass at the big table. And like, here's my last $100, and they put it in there, and there's kind of half asleep. And
Not
the
me.
vibe
I'm
is
too cheap to play at the big table, so I'll go to the roll to win all
true.
day, every day.
I mean, a $25 table, you got to buy in for $1,000 just to play something minimal. So it's tough. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned in your local casinos, I think your roll to wins are $5 also.
That's right.
Yeah. So we can still get a $5 table on the roll to win, and I think
Big AZ said they were $3 in Arizona.
Really,
if I heard him right. So yeah,
well,
I think
he's out there.
So.
I just saw him make a comment a minute ago. Big AZ, let us know. Are they really $3? All right, so let me come back over here to some of these comments. Eric's asking another question about thoughts on hosting a tournament somewhere in Vegas. Could do a team or solo. Be fun to have a big number of people and play and hit the casinos. There are a number of organizations that try to do big meetups. Now, tournaments are a little bit harder because of trying to get on the tables. I don't know. I can't speak for all tables, but I've heard some limits are you need a $10,000 worth of buy-ins for the entire table in order to make it work for them. But, you get 10 players with $1,000 each. You've got the minimum and you've got the table, but, that's quite a bit of money. So in the casino, tournaments can be a little bit difficult, but I could also see a place like Casino Quest hosting a tournament there in Vegas.
Yeah,
I think that would be amazing. With enough of these YouTube content creators coming in, we could come in and set up our equipment. They could stream it live. So David, if you're watching, maybe you could host something for us. Yeah, make it.
I would deal for that all day long. I would just get back there and do it. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So Eric, I think it's one of those that sounds great. I'd love to do it, but I think it would almost have to take advantage of an established tournament like Caesars. In fact, as a teaser for next week, the guest I have coming on, Ron the Don, is going to be here talking about his strategies on tournament play. He's a 3-time tournament winner on the East Coast and West Coast, and he will be here to talk about that next week. So if you can, Eric, come back and we'll bring this back up while he's with us. So Big AZ,
I have to watch that.
Some places
I'm always first out.
Are you really?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually never played a
first out in these tournaments. Yeah,
in the casino either. So that'd be interesting.
Like the online ones, like Color Up has a tournament. I'm always first out because I don't know how to play. Tournaments play is different. Tournament is like follow the player, and you're playing against people, and it's a different mindset for sure.
Yeah. Well, we've played the live fantasy craps and things like that, but that's not necessarily playing against each other. It's just a group of people playing craps together.
Right.
Jeremy, I believe he does actually have real tournaments. The Color Up Club. Yeah. All right, coming back over to Big AZ again. Some places in the country have 2 as a push. Oh, okay, so he was responding to the 12. So it's not always the 12. Sometimes it's the 2, but it's going to be one of those 2 numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then our friend Fives again. John, you're doing an awesome work on the channel.
Greg.
It's been an honor to be friends and watch you grow. So that's a very nice comment, Greg.
I appreciate Greg. Greg got me started. Greg shouted me out way early on and kind of launched me a little bit. So I owe a lot to Greg.
So I'm just going to skim through here before we get. We're going a little bit longer than I thought. I still want to get to one question or one comment here. Let's see what we've got. Super chat. Slam Bright. I'm sorry I missed that. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate the super chat. Craps Cat out there watching, or really in Arizona? She won't play there.
I won't play there.
Oh, Craps Cat, there's a story there. You got to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Why won't you play in Arizona? Shadow 22 echoing what you said. Electronic craps tables steal the jobs and robs the people of contact with the dealers. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to skim through these. I know you. People watching me read is not the most exciting thing. Big AZ's out there saying the top right of the button is where you tip the dealers on the roll to wins.
Yeah. But they don't get
All
to
right.
bet with you. Like it's different than a real table where you can say dealers across. You can't do that on the roll to win. It's just here's $5. And
Yeah,
it feels
I do
cold.
miss that because I love making the bets for dealers rather than giving the cash. You know, at the end of the day, they may make more money this way, but it is a lot more fun getting the dealers into the game. Big AZ also came out and said $3 box numbers at Action, and Wiko Pa has a $1 minimum box numbers and field bets Monday through Thursday. So all of us low
With real
rollers,
dice,
that's where we're going.
Wow.
So
Yeah, no
next
kidding.
vacation, I might be headed to Arizona instead. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and skip through here, guys. I appreciate everybody's comments. I just can't get to all of them all the time. And I wanted to leave a little bit about time to give John to talk about a special event that's coming up. So, John, why don't you tell us about what you've got planned for the holiday season?
Sure. And like I said before, when I called myself ProCraps, I put myself under pressure. I'm doing the same thing here. So I had this weird thought on the flight to or coming home from Vegas a few weeks back. And I thought, why not do a Jerry Lewis style telethon with my channel? Why not try a 24-hour live stream to raise money? And when I was a kid, my parents used to always, every year we'd have a thing with our family. We kind of donate and kind of raise up and lift up one family, like enough money to have one family's kind of December sort of paid for. And I thought we could do that as a group here. Why not have a big fundraiser where I go for 24 hours live, and all the donations that come in, we funnel it through an organization that will make sure that one family, hopefully or ideally a vet that's been touched by gambling addiction or gambling problems, we can lift that family up and give them basically house money to live on for a month or so and let them kind of just chillax and kind of help them right the ship. So what my idea here is to do a craps telethon or a crapsathon. It's going to be Saturday, Sunday after Thanksgiving. So the 27th and 28th. Going to go at 6 p.m. Saturday to 6 p.m. Sunday straight through. What I will do is live stream from my channel, and everybody who's going to be a part of this. Dave, you said you're going to be on this as well. Hawaii Crap Shooters, Jeremy from Colorado, a bunch of others are going to join me. And I'll give you the link so we can live stream it from all of our channels at the same time. It'll be like a stream across the internet, basically. So whatever YouTube channel you like the best, doesn't matter. Log in. The stream is going to be there. And all donations go to this charity. And I figure, you know, whoever wants to join me gets to spend an hour with me. We'll just kind of talk like we're doing right here, just kind of shoot the breeze. We can put the cameras on our tables and play a little bit. We can strategize. We can do whatever. It doesn't matter. Open mic. So I've got some folks that I know I want to spend an hour with, but honestly, any subscriber or viewer, I'll put the link out. And if you just want to click it, join and talk at 3 a.m, I don't care. We're here to raise money for a great cause. And I'm really stoked about it. And like I said, now that I've said it out loud and across the whole internet, it has to happen. So like I said before, pressure is now on. So we're going to do this huge fundraiser. And I am just scared to death, but also really excited about the chance to really do some good. And watching the Casino Quest thing last night, the amount of money that they raised last night, I know that we can do this. I know that there's generous folks out there that really want to get involved. And this is for a good cause. And I think it's going to be something that we'll be remembering and hopefully able to do it every year over and over again. So the first annual Crapsathon, and I think the month of December is the time to do it.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'm honored that you'll let me be a part of that. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure more details will be coming out before too long, and
Definitely so.
let's see if we can, make a family's holiday and make things a little bit easier for them. And and John, thank you for organizing this.
Of course. Something
All right, John,
super fun. It's close to the heart. So.
Yep. All right, John, I think this is going to wrap the show right here, unless there's anything else that you want to review or talk about.
No, just I'm glad that you're back. I'm glad you're feeling better. We were all worried about you there for a while, and when you were quiet, we were like, oh man, how's Dave doing? But I'm so glad that you're back, and that I missed the show so much. You have no idea. Like Monday nights with Dave was like a thing. So I think everybody out there agrees with me. So we're so happy to have you here. Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. I really do appreciate that. And I talked a little bit about it in the pre-recorded show that I did last week. And I did have some health issues there at the very beginning, but really it just became that we were very busy. My oldest daughter got married We went to Vegas twice. We went on a massive Florida trip just a couple of weeks ago, and needed extra income. And so my wife and I both took on a part-time job, and we were just busy. We were super, super busy. So vacation's over. We're back at it. So the show's going to go on for a while. But
so good.
It may not be every week. I'm not really sure. I do have, like I said earlier, we've got Ron the Don. He's going to be here next week. I know Tony Leo wants to come back, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that, maybe right after the first of the year. So, yeah. So let me put it out there. If you want to be on the show, if you would like to be a guest and have me interview you, reach out to me. Let me know. We'll make it happen. So it would actually make my job just a little bit easier if I have some people volunteer to be on the show rather than me trying to go scout them out. So, John, thank you very much again for coming on the show tonight. I really do appreciate it. Guys, we're going to be back again next week. And yeah, let's just go ahead and end it here. Thank you all very much. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you, Dave.